Pahkitew Island, the final total drama season to follow the traditional formula, and perhaps the least known of all the 7 seasons. Plenty of people are surprised to find out that this season even exists, and honestly, that checks out. The cast here is small, and we have little time to get to know them, and the personalities we get this time around are so off the wall that, predictably, Pahkitew Island performed pretty poorly. But in true total drama fashion, we got a great gamut of 13 distinct personalities, which all deserve to be recognized. So let's get to it. I'm Brad with Wicked Binge, and today we're breaking down this 3rd generation of total drama contestants, starting with the most benevolent and ending with the most vile.
I demand the host narrate an explanation.
As always, let's start with the most noble and work our way down. Our gold medal goes to Ella because, well, duh. Ella's perhaps the most good character total drama has ever seen, being a thinly veiled parody of a Disney princess. Her songbird sweetness and Florence Nightingale graces endeared her to almost all of her fellow competitors, and even some of the island's feral fauna.
Thank you, my feathered friend!
But all this makes Ella too much of a good thing, as it were. Her romantic view of the world is impractical, and her time on the island sets her up for some rough collisions with reality. Namely, she gets bullied relentlessly by Sugar, and Dave unintentionally breaks her heart by rejecting her fantastical notions of him. During this time, she never raises a hand to defend herself. This makes her a bit of a martyr, and the show never really does anything with that. Her undoing is self-inflicted, and she leaves the island with a song about her unresolved issues. Is Ella a good character? Yeah, she is. But she's too good. She's so good that she's naive. And that might win her a gold medal, but as we see, it did her no favors elsewhere. A more practical good is our silver medalist, Jasmine. Actually, the word practical really summarizes Jasmine as a character. She's a survivalist with a penchant for getting others to believe in themselves. She's also a headstrong character who sticks by her sense of integrity. Notably, Jasmine worries about intimidating others and wants to be accepted. She eventually finds acceptance in Sean, a fellow outcast.
Do I like him that much?
And while most of her development did revolve around this romance, she also demonstrated herself as brave, loyal, and able to stand up for herself. However, her most defining moment is in the finale. After losing faith in Sean's honesty and his feelings for her, Jasmine is offered the chance to torment him in the last leg of the challenge to decide the competition's winner. Jasmine stops herself from acting on her anger and instead chooses to forgive Sean because she cares for him.
You won!
No! We won!
It's definitely a testament to her character that pays off in either ending. Jasmine's a really good person, and we should all be like her. For bronze, we present Rodney, a simple farm boy cursed to fall in love with any woman who gives him a sideways glance. And we do mean that literally. To be clear, Rodney's no playboy about it.
Love is an arrow you can't dodge.
In fact, the objects of his affection are never even aware of their significance. But that doesn't stop Rodney from gutting himself emotionally while he tries to sort out his feelings. The big lug is undoubtedly our most respectful contestant for this reason. His commitment to monogamy leaves him regularly devastated, and yet he soldiers on, much to the bewilderment of his former beloveds. But Rodney's no slacker in the competition either. While his thoughts are often scattered and his heart perpetually torn, his bulk makes him a valuable asset, and he appears to use his powers for good. To be so sheltered and so oblivious, Rodney's a sweet guy and a romantic. Here's to hoping he finds the right one someday. Next, we have Sky, the Olympian athlete in the making. Sky was consistently our straight man, despite her athletic prowess. Standing contrast to past athletes like Joe and Eva, Sky wasn't hyper-competitive nor inclined towards aggression. She was also a friendly person who could be counted on to diffuse tense situations and play mediator when needed. In fact, it almost feels like, with all the outlandish personalities surrounding her, Sky was sort of downplayed by the writers, so we'd have an easygoing point of view every now and then. Most of Sky's drama comes in the form of Dave, a boy next door who gradually charms her into a disastrous will they won't they.
I don't like Dave. Well, not like.
She instigates a bit of the friction in this relationship, in fairness, misleading Dave of her intentions. Regardless, she still does her best to alleviate a messy situation. When that fails, she doesn't let it throw her off her game, nor does she stop caring about the people around her. She even manages to find a positive thing to say about Sugar, something few other competitors have accomplished. Despite her messy on-set romantic life, Sky does manage to make it through the game to the finale, thanks to her resourcefulness and her direction. She ranks where she does because, for her bad taste in men, she is a good person, and her time on the show makes that clear. Sean, the Doomsday Prepper, comes next. An indie character with a certain proclivity towards beating down the undead, Sean is a good mix of outlandish and reasonable, much like Sky.
No one is getting my brains!
Unlike Sky, however, Sean is unintelligent emotionally, something that comes around to bite him in his pursuit of romancing Jasmine. It also makes him a polarized figure in regards to his loyalty. On the one hand, Sean is a survivor, and that makes him valuable given the conditions that Pahkitew subjects the competitors to. Not only that, he's willing to share his expertise with those who need it.
You wanna fool the dead? You gotta smell like the dead.
On the other hand, though, he's a bit of a coward who's willing to leave people out to dry, even his crush. His worst is during the finale, where he actually goes back on his offer to split his prize money with Jasmine. His shortcomings aside, though, Sean's pretty cool in his element. He's a unique presence if nothing else, and he definitely earns his spot in the finale. Next is our resident LARPer, Leonard, who doesn't last very long for obvious reasons. Despite having good intentions, Leonard is so preoccupied with this fantasy universe that he's impractical, even useless in the real one.
I know many spells to ward off evil.
His delusions that he can do magic are perhaps his biggest drawback, and they end up costing him the game. He's the only member of the cast to return for another season, and his time away hasn't done much to curb his overactive imagination, though he does manage to find his people, seeing as he found Tammy. Leonard's heart is in the right place, even if his brain doesn't seem to be.
Can't see me anymore, can ya?
Like any good witch, he uses his powers to stand against evildoers, and honestly, you can never fault a guy like that. Then we have Sammy, the good twin. Well, sort of. Sammy has spent her life as Sammy by the time we meet her, repeatedly humiliated and scorned by her wrathful sister, Amy. So we can't blame her for being resentful, especially when her time on the island proves that she doesn't really deserve it.
I auditioned for Total Drama to get away from Amy.
She's kind and helpful, even going out into the woods at the crack of dawn to help gather supplies. She hears out other people's suggestions that she stand up for herself, though these all ultimately backfire. In the end, she's reduced to cheating and having Amy voted off in her place. The thing is, though, the show doesn't really give her the benefit of the doubt. Her time concludes with her and Amy arguing in the canon, unable to be differentiated, as if to say that Sammy wasn't any better in the end.
She's had it coming for years.
All things considered, this was an underwhelming arc for the fandom, and their lukewarm response sort of echoed that. Is Sammy a victim? Yeah, but she isn't only a victim. Her time on the island helps her grow a backbone, but they punish her for it and send her away with her evil sister in tow. For the unorthodox, dare we say bad, way that the twins were handled though, Sammy was one of our nicest competitors. The shame that she never caught a break. With our good section wrapped up, we now begin our very small gray area, starting with Beardo, just about perfectly neutral. To even comment on Beardo's personality is hard because we see so little of it. He appears to be shy and a little aloof, if his facial expressions are anything to go by, and the only contributions he makes are in the form of sound effects he produces with his mouth, even at inopportune times. All this points to him being a jaded individual. He leaves no footprints though. He hurts about as much as he helps, which is to say, not very much.
Why are you running in slow motion?
And being the first camper to get the boot is always hard, but he's at least gracious about his fate. He even admits that he enjoyed meeting the people on his team.
It was really nice to meet all of you!
Certainly, there wasn't a lot of time this season to flesh out the characters, so we can't fault Beardo for being the first to go. It is unfortunate. Had he found his people earlier, maybe he would have stood a chance. Our next gray character is Topher, the wannabe host whose only real ambition is to take over Total Drama. Topher might be an antagonist, he certainly isn't a nice person, but we rank him where we do because he doesn't antagonize his fellow competitors, so much as he does Chris.
The seed of doubt is planted.
There are instances where his penchant for taking over as host inconveniences his team, something that they've all commented on, but it's less about the game with Topher and more about the bigger picture he sees. But he manages to win Chris over by being his sycophant, only to turn around and backstab the host for his own gain. This was one of the more interesting arcs of the season, as it gave Chris a glimpse of his own mortality, introducing him to a previously unseen level of insecurity. He does, however, best the guy at his own game, and as he's eliminated, Topher can only gape.
Never play a Leia!
The thing about bullying Chris is that you can't say the guy didn't have it coming. For as harmless as Topher ultimately was, he was vain, selfish, and dominative. He didn't do anything that he did for noble reasons, nor did he have a problem with Chris being a generally bad person. He just wanted to be him. Moving on from unintentional evil, let's take a look at a guy who wanted to be evil and failed at every turn, Max.
Plenty of time to evil.
Even Ella could only describe Max as a little gnome for his crass and obnoxious nature. A wannabe supervillain, Max was unintelligent, uncharismatic, unmotivated, and incredibly unfortunate. But all these things aside, he seems like a pretty nice kid. He at least has a soft spot for children and pretty good manners. And unlike his sidekick, Max never tries to hurt anyone. He admits himself his secondary goal is simply to meet people, since he doesn't get out much. Still, his general ineptness make it difficult for him to succeed at anything related to his evil grand designs, and he even gets disqualified arbitrarily without doing anything wrong himself, or at least not paying for it. Max is hard to place. It seems an insult to all villains to label him as one, so we'll say he's the very bottom of our gray pile. Yeah, he's unpleasant, but a far cry from truly wicked. With that said, we arrive at the dark side. These characters are the bad and the evil. Next, we have Queen Sugar. The fandom has long suspected that Sugar is meant to be a parody of Honey Boo Boo, a reality show child pageant queen whose popularity was at its peak when Pahkitew premiered.
You scuff my pageant shoes and I'll toss you out the window!
Sugar is appropriately ostentatious and self-centered. She takes every opportunity to make a spectacle of herself, never realizing that the audience is laughing at her and not with her. Not only that, she's an antagonistic presence on the island, despite her overexuberance. She lies without remorse and rarely with cause. She enjoys seeing other people get hurt and somehow manages to make you pity some terrible people for having to deal with her. So for that, we place her here. May she never resurface again.
I should not be in this cannon!
Then we have Amy, the evil twin. Another weird villain to have. Amy seems like she'd be a shoo-in for the main finale, but she isn't. Rather than a cutthroat Aryan beauty ice queen, Amy's petulant and only interested in dominating her weaker sister.
I am gonna change her birth certificate as soon as we get home.
In fact, Amy only exists to be spiteful. She's not ambitious in how she plays the game, she just orders around Sammy and derides her in front of everyone. As mentioned, this leads to Sammy snapping and poisoning her, leading to her being eliminated from the competition. Amy comes back to right the wrongs that have been done to her, demonstrating a shred of conviction. But even this falls short, and she and her sister are sent blasting off into the horizon. Amy probably could have been a great final antagonist. She certainly felt like she had potential, but this never goes anywhere. Nevertheless, we can comfortably give her bronze for most evil, considering the lengths she was willing to go to torment her own family. Our silver entrant is remembered as the worst possible breakup, Dave. To be fair, Total Drama does have a habit of sort of pairing folks off, and it was fun to see that trope averted. But the souring relationship between Dave and Sky really did expose this guy as manipulative and caustic. Originally a germaphobe, but otherwise pretty tame, he becomes increasingly stalkerish and entitled as Sky starts to slip away. Perhaps his worst moment is the finale, when he takes numerous attempts on Sky's safety to punish her for rejecting him. When offered a chance at the million, he swore to burn it in front of Sky to punish her.
I'm gonna light it on fire in front of Sky!
The thing is, Dave isn't 100% at fault for how things went down. Sky did mislead him about her intentions, and it could be argued that she strung him along for being useful. But you can't give him that because he makes everything so much worse by being a venomous person. In true Total Drama fashion, it cost him his dignity and his hair.
And when I met you, I
Don't care!
And who are we to defy the gods? So Dave gets silver, but loses out on gold thanks to one other. Of course, we're talking about Scarlet. Scarlet's a quiet brainiac who only talks when she gets excited, at which point she becomes pretty talkative. This charming feature is her whole personality at first, and then she gets suckered into an alliance with Max, which forces her to do all the heavy lifting. But then the island starts to malfunction. Here, Scarlet's true nature and design are revealed, and it turns out the girl is a grade A malefactor. With the island at her fingertips, Scarlet demands the prize money and offers an ultimatum. Chris surrenders, or he and the contestants die in a horrible, fiery explosion.
am evil!
To be fair, other characters have cheated for the money in the past, but Scarlet was willing to permanently eliminate a whole cluster of teenagers who had never personally wronged her for her goals. And that's before you realize that her evil nature had been foreshadowed, particularly in her audition tape, which posits world domination or worldwide devastation as her ultimate goal. She also traumatized her kid brother with his own toys, which is just, I mean, ouch.
He's still in therapy.
But credit where it's due, Scarlet was a really good villain, even if she was more of a plot contrivance than a character. We present her with the gold for that reason. Alright, woo! We did it! That's all 3 casts of the great Total Drama. If you haven't already, be sure to check out our first 2 videos on the subject, and be sure to drop us a line in the comments about what sort of TD content you might want to see in the future. Hit the subscribe button on your way out, and of course, stay wicked.